How much does it cost to launch a beauty brand today? Well, there isn't a right answer, but I can tell you that there's some rough guide kind of budgets and frameworks that you should keep in mind when creating yours. So first up, I think it's really important to understand there is so many different ways to finance a company today. There can be the self-funding route, there could be the investment route. I mean, the investment route can start with first friends and family, angel, Series A, Series B, the list goes on. But of course, like all of that has its perks, has its merits, and we can do another video another time on how to find the right investment partner. But in terms of how much roughly you should be budgeting is really important to know before, so then you can figure out what route to go down. For example, for us, we're self-funded. We were able to figure out that we could start that way with the finances that we had, which has a lot of perks because the longer you wait to raise, the more evaluation you have and the less of the company you're diluting and giving away, right? So ideally, if you can self-fund for as long as possible, it's always good. But you don't just invest, right, for money. You also need smart capital, advice, boards. It's a whole shabam that I'm not going to talk about right now. So in terms of now figuring out what you need to keep aside. So first up, the first initial cost. These are the kind of rough budgets you should keep in mind to at least just kickstart, tantalize the idea of your beauty brand. And if you realize later this brand might not work or you don't have the passion anymore, you have to be prepared to lose that money. So this is around, I would say, minimum around $10,000, but it can go up to really as much as you want, depending on the type of vision you have for the brand. Let me paint a picture. You might already know from day one you want to launch the next best big brand in Sephora that will sell in 2-3 years for $1 billion. You're going to need to spend a lot more at the beginning. I mean, I'm talking from your logo to your design to your lab samples. You're going to work with the best, and that will cost a hell of a lot. But if you want to take it step by step, you're not in it for the short term, you're in it for the long run, then you can really not spend a lot, and that's the saving grace of it all. So for example, the first thing you have to consider are things like your logo, your visual identities that you can really find any freelancer to help you at your budget, but you can also work with the very best creative agencies. But I found around $1,000 to $2,000 is enough at the beginning to keep that afloat. Then you have to think about things like trademark or domain buying. And again, I would say a couple of $1,000s depending on how many countries you want to get it trademarked and which classes, which again, I can talk about in a whole video on how to register and trademark a beauty brand today. It's class 3, but we'll talk about it another time. Then also you want to consider other costs like shipping costs in between getting samples to your labs, maybe an upfront deposit for your lab. Maybe you want to also consider things like hard costs that you have to do, like maybe your travel budget to go to vendors or to go to suppliers or to go to expos. So then it comes to your launch budget. So this is a bit more of a bigger budget, and therefore you'll either need to self-fund a hell of a lot more or go to your first round of investment. But usually you're going to need around $150,000, and I find on average $300,000 is the medium, but $150,000 is the minimum. This basically should include things like your website cost, your first production run, whether you're doing 3 to 5 SKUs or more at your minimum order of about maybe 5,000 units, 10,000 units. You can imagine there's going to be a bit of a production cost needed. Also your shipping costs, your storage costs, your initial team cost, your advertising launch cost, your marketing, the list goes on. Around $300,000 keep aside, but you can get away with about $150,000. Then once you launch, you're going to need a budget to continue the launch and to grow the business. So while that's an amount you should keep at launch, don't wait too late to have the rest of the money, because you do not want to start raising money just as you launch. It can slow down your growth, it can distract you as a founder, and it can take a lot of time. So I always say raise a bit more, but only allocate a certain amount at launch and the rest keep aside for the rest of the year. So for me, it goes to around, depending on what kind of launch you're doing. If you're doing a D2C launch, honestly speaking, you probably don't need as much as a retailer launch, but I would say around $500,000 to $750,000 is the amount you might need for a year for a D2C focused launch. But then if you're entering retailers, especially like the likes of Sephora, which are very expensive to launch with, have a lot of co-op costs and a lot of hard costs that you might not have considered, those are probably going to cost you around 1.5 million plus in terms of your cash flow needs. So these are benchmarks. Please take it with a pinch of salt, because overall it really depends on the type of brand you're going to build. But it can help you understand roughly how much should I raise, how much should I park, and can I do it all on my own or not? Let me tell you one thing. A wise person once told me, never use your own money, use someone else's. But another wise person, my dad, once told me, never use someone's money, just use yours. So there really isn't a right way or a wrong way. Just do what's best for you and what you believe is best for the brand. So to recap, initially you're gonna need around $10,000 to $30,000 from a tantalizing curiosity budget. Then in terms of your launch budget, you're gonna need around $150,000 to $300,000. And then for your year budget, depending if you're D2C, you might need about $500,000, but if you're retailer, you might need $1.5 million plus. Keep that aside, keep that in mind, and that's a rough benchmark for you. If you have any more questions on this, please let me know and feel free to subscribe because I'll be sharing a lot more content like this. And again, I'm curious to know, maybe if you created a brand and you're willing to share, how much did it take for you to launch your brand? And it'll help the community about to create their brands as well. So let us know.